All right, and hello and welcome back to How to Teach the Bible preaching class. We got over the entire template. Let's see if I could. No, we don't need to bring up the template. You guys have gone through the entire template with me now, and we've explained all the elements. What I wanted to show you right now with this is actually an epistle that I preached from, and kind of how I've tweaked my template to kind of serve my needs and how it best serves me. So we have the passage here. That stays as it is. We also have the title, which that stays as that is. That stays up there. The hook. There are elements that are going to stay exactly how they are. The hook is never going to be at the end, right? That's not how a hook works. That's an ending story. And then we have our sermon idea. As I said, I bold it. It's a pretty bold keyword I have here. As you can see, concepts. I haven't altered this document at all. I really just pulled it up just now. So I used concepts this week, and this is actually the passage. One thing that I didn't cover in the template is actually one thing I'll maybe talk about now, and that's when you read your passage, be sure to take the time to really read over your passage a few times just so it sounds smooth. You don't want it to sound like someone who just started to read the passage for the first time and he got the King James version, so he's fumbling all over it. Make sure to read smoothly, and in fact, read it in such a way where it sounds like it's your words, or it sounds like dramatic. We all love the dramatic readings of the Bible on YouTube when they're read to us, not the Siri voice or the AI voice that sounds all choppy and stuff. Should be the same when you're preaching too. If anything, the Bible should be one of the smoothest things that people listen to when you're preaching. And so really take the time to kind of practice that so that the Bible sounds smooth. And so maybe it could even sound like Paul himself is pleading um, alive through you. So I have the text right here. I actually don't bring a Bible with me onto the pulpit because I copy and paste all my um, all my text onto my sermon manuscript, which is what this is, the template, the sermon worksheet, the whatever you want to call it. This is essentially manuscript at the end of the day. Um, so I have it all here, and I'll read through it. Here's the final greetings. I'll read through it all, and then I'll jump into my passage. And I've already reminded myself that I'm going to be using the term concepts. I could have possibly actually taken this and put it down here, but I always feel comfortable with it up here. So before I dive in, I remember keywords, concept, my first division statements in bold so that they pop out. Here's a apparently I forgot to make that division statement 3, but I'm not really counting. It's not like I'm messing up and saying like I'm just kind of going through that, and you can see that they really pop out. Boom, boom, boom. That way, at a glance, I can just see it. So once I'm done with the passage, I go into this, and instead of an explanation, you'll actually notice that this is actually the text. I rejoice in the Lord greatly that now at length you have revived your concern for me. I just read it. It's up here, but I don't want to have to be referring back to a different page. So I actually copy and paste. I'll take this, and then I'll copy and I'll paste it here. And then instead of having an explanation portion, I'll actually just bold things that I want to talk about or emphasize or things that I need to bring out of the text. I might even underline here, as you see, greatly, and I'll make that a point to talk about. And so in my explanation, these are sort of reminders of myself of things that I want to talk about, things that are noteworthy to explain. And if I'm worried about ever forgetting anything, I actually will put an explanation or a bullet point underneath, just to remind me. And then I'll have illustrations. And this one isn't filled in. I actually filled it in after I printed it out. Um, so I kind of left a couple. I think I left the hook empty as well, so I could take it with me and fill it in person. And then we have the division statement. So what you'll notice is I don't have the explanation and I don't have the tie-in. I don't really need those. I know to do them because I've done enough sermons. And so we have all of this. So this is the text. As you can see, I bolded for my explanation, so I know what to talk about. I have my illustration. I have a little bit more notes, like stay calm was something that I wanted to emphasize, the ability to stay calm in the midst of the storm, which is the whole purpose of being content. And the Army underwater special forces actually do that. And I used to train jujitsu, and that's also integral to jujitsu. I think jujitsu was actually my fallback illustration in case I didn't feel like the Army underwater special forces was hitting with the audience. So we do this. I actually broke this into 2 points um, that I wanted to cover. So my division statement is one concept, but I had 2 concepts within it that I wanted to bring out, which meant that there are 2 texts that I have to essentially use. And instead of 2 illustrations, I felt like that was fine. I could illustrate it with just this. And so the opposite of support. Both of these were about support, the previous record and the continued record. But what's the opposite of support? What's the opposite of both of these? It's pettiness, it's all this other stuff. And I just wanted to point that out because, I'd been seeing a lot of like pettiness and back talking and doctrine in our culture a lot, and I really just kind of wanted to address it, and I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page as a church, that I just didn't want to see that in our church or us mimic that culture that I was seeing starting to come up in other cultures as well. And then we flow into the conclusion, which is this. I had my own application. I don't always write my application, I just know what I want to bring out. And then I have my altar call. You'll see that I have communion because it happened to be the first week. And then I also had a benediction that I wrote out. That I felt actually the last part of the passage was sort of a doxology, sort of a benediction of itself. I always have a benediction for my church that's sort of a blessing that you pronounce as a pastor over your congregation, and I really like it, and so does my congregation. But I actually don't even write it either. I usually just know that I'm going to flow into that. Lately, I have been writing it because I forgot one time, and I just walked off, and everyone was kind of thrown off by that. And I felt it too as I walked away. I felt like something was off, and little did I know that that's what it was. But anyways, so that's kind of a example. I wanted to show you my own template. That being said, we are now in the methodology and philosophy of preaching an epistle, and this is going to be rather short. This is about 8 minutes now, but we'll be finishing up pretty soon because an epistle is very short. An epistle is a letter. It's a letter that one person has written to another. Most of the epistles in the New Testament I think it's something like 60% are written by Paul. And then we have a couple anonymous, like Hebrews. And then we have other epistles. So they're letters that are written by someone to someone. Now, these epistles are written to churches. But the reason why I say they're written by someone to someone is they're not just rambling. They're logical. There's a reason why this person is writing to this person. So that means there's a message, there's a point, if I might say. There's a message, there's a whole reason why they're writing. I think a really good example of this, and we'll just bring that and then go to Jude. I guess I got to type in Jude 1. A really good example of this is Jude, and I'll go ahead and just read. Let's kind of belittle me real quick. I'm just kidding. It's not belittle. I just thought that'd be funny. Let's look at this together. And a really good example of this is Jude 3. Beloved, and mind you, Jude is writing Jude, a servant of Jesus Christ and brother of James, is writing to this church. And he says, Beloved, although I was very eager to write to you about our common salvation. So, oh, looks like the top is different from yours and mine. He says, Hey guys, so I really wanted to write an epistle to you about our common salvation, the salvation which binds us all. That's the whole point. That's the whole message of the epistle that he wanted to write. Although that's not the epistle that he wrote. Rather, he says, I found it necessary to write appealing to you to contend for the faith that was once for all delivered to the saints. So this is actually what the epistle is about. It was supposed to be about this, but he found out something about the church that he's writing to, and so now he's writing about this, and then he tells you why. He tells you why he switched it up. Verse 4, For certain people have crept in unannounced, who long ago were destined for this condemnation, ungodly people who pervert the grace of our God into sensuality and deny our only Master and Lord Jesus Christ. He's addressing a concern about these people that have crept into the church and are licentious. They behave in debauchery, they're perverting the grace, they're doing all this bad stuff, and so now he's writing to contend, to argue against these people for the faith that was delivered to Christians. And so that's what the entire epistle is about. That's what this entire one chapter epistle is about. It's about this. And so you can read the rest of it knowing that that is essentially what it's about. And these are going to be his arguments and illustrations and his rebukes and stuff for the rest of the epistle. Because this is the whole reason why he's writing. He tells us that. It's the same thing when we go into an epistle and we want to preach from it. Sorry, I'm just making this bigger. And we want to preach from it. There is a logical flow to epistles. There is argumentation. There's a reason why they're writing to the church. And we can read these epistles, we can read these letters, and we can understand what it is that they're trying to say, and then form a 3-point sermon, form a sermon idea in 3 division statements from the passage. And so epistles are very easy to preach because they're so logical and because they flow and because they present arguments. And because they present arguments, they also involve their own illustrations because they wish for the church to understand them. And then they might even use illustrations from the Bible to back up their points because these are sort of the substance to their arguments. They might even say, hey, you know, Abraham did this, and that just makes perfect sense. So there's sort of a logical flow that's building here that is perfect for us reading, understanding, and building our sermon from. So epistles are very easy in that respect. And so that's why we start out with them. They're great for honing in, identifying your sermon idea, which they're trying to communicate, understanding the division statements, the division of the text, and building your sermon. And I hope that we can go through a few of these before we jump into the next one. Unfortunately, we won't be able to, so we'll just do it once. But epistles are great for getting used to the routine of building sermons because they're so logical. They're really easy to come up with sermons for, and so you can really begin to practice and get your feet under you with epistles. Just go through an entire epistle and kind of build a preaching series through that, and then you'll really get the flow of building a sermon. And then once you get the flow of building a sermon, we can start to go into narratives, parables, and all these other types of scriptures that we'll be preaching through. But yeah, anyways, that's sort of a methodological philosophy of preaching an epistle. And I did want to explain first, sort of my flow of an outline. So you can just kind of see that I do knock some stuff off, and then once again get used to how it flows, how it looks when we look at a sermon and how it's done. That like I said, I just include scripture, and these are my explanations. So you can see that um, I really do use what I'm talking about. I don't just teach and then I do a different thing. The template that I taught you guys really is the template that I use each and every week. That being said, we're going to start to move into level one, which is building the sermon from the top down, which is not how we do. That's not how we taught it. But just so you kind of see it as it's preached in a way and understand it a bit more. And then I believe level two is constructing it together, and then level three is just kind of running through it. Alrighty, so I'll see you guys in the next video.